If you've been here before, let's go ahead and start talking about some of the things that you can expect in this first hour of Chicago Live today. Okay, so leading law enforcement officers are increasing safety in the third largest city in the country. We know that is no small task. It's no easy task, but someone's got to do it, of course. And today, our political reporter, Schultz, is doing a one-on-one interview with Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling. And we're taking a look at the new data for the things that were over the past year, now that we're starting to get an overview of 2025. And also, we're getting a better idea of the challenges and the encouraging trends as well going into 2026. So that's going to be in this first hour. We'll talk with Paris. Also, major news this morning out of Minnesota. Tim Walz announced that he will not be seeking re-election for a third term as governor. He said that he can't give a political campaign his all after what he described as an extraordinarily difficult year for his state. Of course, he is facing mounting criticism over the last month or two now over accusations of widespread fraud in his state. And of course, this is also coming after his failed vice presidential bid along Kamala Harris's presidential ticket in 2024. So we're going to talk to a reporter in Minneapolis about all of that. Let me also give you a few live looks at some of the things that are happening today. One of the biggest stories over the weekend was the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, also their son, and they were in court today. They both pled not guilty. Nicolás Maduro says that he is an innocent man, but this is right outside of the courthouse today where they were in court in New York City. You can see there are a lot of people outside of that courthouse. Even though they have now left the courthouse, there's still a lot of people out there. We've seen similar scenes even here in Chicago over the weekend. We've seen some protests on both sides of this. People saying that I believe that sign says no military base. But there are people on both sides of this who have been speaking out, whether it's here in Chicago, in Florida. We've seen scenes there as well, and New York City, as well as on down in Central America. There are greater conversations, greater implications to all of this. And so the vice president there, who was under Nicolás Maduro, has now been sworn in as the active president there in Venezuela. You can see video now of her swearing in ceremony. This is a live picture there. But there are a lot of questions now as to what comes next. So that was a big story over the weekend that we will still continue to talk about for quite some time as the what happens now starts to come to fruition. What does Venezuela look like next? How does the U.S. Interact with what they have going on in Venezuela, especially when it comes to their oil and their trade? How does that come along the way? And what are some of the greater implications for other nations as well who might be looking at this and asking questions themselves, or have people in their countries who are asking questions as well? We've seen people who have cheered to see Nicolás Maduro, who was, not even elected back into power. He stayed in power after losing an election back just several months ago, lost power technically, but stayed in power. And so there are a lot of questions as to that opposition party, where they come into things. President Trump has said that they won't be a part of this new government, but they have a lot of questions because they feel like their leader, who just recently received the Nobel Peace Prize, should actually become a part of the transition team. And President Trump here in the U.S. has said he doesn't see that happening, that she doesn't have the support. but also seeing the vice president who was under Nicolás Maduro, who has been a constant by his side for many years now, decades that she has been a part of government. This is a new role for her, of course, but who has been a part of government there in Venezuela for many years. So if you think of the charges that Nicolás Maduro is facing, there are a lot of conversations as to what part she may have played in her previous roles in some of the bad acts, if you will, that have come to play out now in terms of charges for Nicolás Maduro, his wife, and also his son. So lots to sift through there that we will be continuing to watch in the hours, weeks, and days to come. So stay with us for more on that. But, with the new year also, there's a lot of weight loss goals for many Americans and people around the world. GoodRx announced this morning the newly FDA-approved Wegovy pill. Yes, a pill. It is the first ever oral GLP-1 medication. It's now available for $149 per month. And we have the senior vice president and consumer savings expert at GoodRx, who is joining me now to kind of flesh out what this means for people near and far. Thank you so much, Godiva. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And would you pronounce your last name? Is it Iyer?
That's right.
Okay, wonderful. Recent studies show 1 in 8 U.S. adults have tried GLP-1 medications. What difference do you think we'll see in this shift from injections to pill form?
This is going to dramatically open up access for many more Americans who are looking to get on therapy. It just lowers the friction to start for a lot of people, and people who've been scared by the needles or the logistics, right? This makes it so much more accessible, both psychologically, right? Taking a pill is just easier. And also from a logistics and operations perspective, it's, there's no injection training. You don't have to, keep it in the fridge, things like that. So we do believe that this is going to open up the market for quite a few people who need to get on GLP medications.
Are the benefits the same? Sometimes one form or another has a more potent, expectancy, if you will, for people, or is one better than the other for people who are taking them?
Well, the manufacturer, Novo, has conducted clinical studies on the pill form as well as, the injection form when they first sought approval. And the clinical studies have shown significant weight loss percentages. I won't quote the percentages here or misrepresent anything from a clinical perspective, but these medications are potent, they're effective, they're safe, they're FDA approved. And so, yes, we can expect the same effectiveness from the pill version as well.
And is it still requiring a prescription, or are we getting to the point where this is over the counter?
It does require a prescription. I see what you're getting at, right, with the consumerism and the demand that's surrounding this category. But yes, these are prescription medications, and one does need a prescription to access it. There are a whole host of direct-to-consumer platforms, including GoodRx, right? So we have a weight loss subscription where you can get the Wegovy injection and very soon the pill as well. Our subscription starts at $39. It's very favorably priced, and there are a host of other companies that do this, so you can very easily get a prescription for this medication.
Tell me a little bit more about the pricing. You mentioned a piece of that there, but let's delve into that a little bit further. Are there tiers, and what's included? How does this work?
Yeah, so this pricing is available to any self-pay customer. What that means is somebody who's paying out of pocket, right? They're not going through their insurance. And so for any self-pay or cash pay customer, they can start on the lowest dose at $149 a month. That's what the manufacturer Novo, our partnership with them, provides the access to that price. It's $149 a month for the medication. The telehealth or the prescription or subscription piece is separate, right? That's $39 a month, as I mentioned. So the two lowest doses, which are 1.5 mg and 4 mg, those two pills are priced at $149. And then the price goes up for the higher doses.
Mm-hmm. And when you say starting, and I asked this question for injections as well, but is there a timetable on how long people would take Wegovy? Is this a long-term type of drug? Like once you start it, now I've got to take it for the rest of my life? Or is there a time frame that you would take it? Say, take it for 3 months, take it for 6 months?
Yeah, and I'll caveat by saying that your doctor or medical professional will, whoever's prescribing the medication for you, you should have that conversation with your doctor around the dosage, the duration, and all of that. But these are typically chronic medications, right? And they help treat chronic conditions like diabetes and obesity and so on. So these are chronic medications that one takes for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And is it daily, weekly? How do the pills work?
Yeah, so depending on whether it's the injection or the pill, right? The injection is weekly, typically. That's how people administer it, and then the pill is different, and it's taken once daily.
Mm-hmm. One of the biggest conversations, I mean, today Congress is back in session. Obviously, we were just showing pictures of the court proceedings for Venezuela's president, and that will be a major conversation for them. But another one will be healthcare as they try to work out another deal and avoid another government shutdown by the end of this month. How does this factor into the conversations about insurance premiums for people and the price for things going up?
Yeah, I mean, cost and affordability has been a huge part of the conversation in recent times. And you've seen a lot of kind of actions and efforts taken by the administration to help lower costs. And so these efforts, right, our partnership with Novo, for example, and the cash pay price that we announced today complement all of those efforts, right, and complement the gaps in insurance coverage. So ultimately, as we see more competition in this market and we see these kind of pricing dynamics, we do expect that long-term insurance coverage should improve and these medications will be more affordable for people who choose to pay insurance as well. But in the near term, right, this is, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a dramatically different way to expand access to patients by offering a direct-to-patient, a low cash price of $149.
When we talk about expanding access, I think it's always really important that we mention the side effects as well that some people may have from these drugs. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the common side effects are all GI related. Again, this delves into clinical territory, so I'll always caveat, consult with your healthcare professional or doctor who's prescribing the medication for you. Most of the side effects that we've seen are all GI related, mostly mild, right, related to nausea, diarrhea, things like that. If a patient who's on these medications has other side effects, they should absolutely consult their doctor.
And you mentioned telehealth. I remember when weight loss surgeries, bariatric surgery and things of that nature really started to become very popular years ago. I remember that there was an aspect of like mental health that started to go into it for a lot of the surgeons, that would have someone work with the patients about the life-changing types of things that come along with losing that much weight very suddenly. Does the telehealth include something of that sort?
Yeah, so most of these telehealth subscriptions, including the one with GoodRx, includes consultations, unlimited consultations with a healthcare provider. What you're getting at is kind of more of the mental health angle of it, right? And we haven't seen that, very obviously, but obviously if you're in touch with a healthcare professional and, mental health and other issues come up, they will direct you to the right professional. But it's an interesting question, right? Which is, what does this do to the psychological aspects of how a person feels after losing that much weight drastically?
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was at a medical reporter, and I remember the conversations about that, because there is an increase in divorces even surrounding those surgeries at the time. So that mental health aspect of it was really important for a lot of people. Another aspect of increasing access would be asking about the supply. I mean, if demand is booming, does the supply become an issue again? I remember even when these first were on the market, supply became an issue.
That's absolutely right. We've talked with the manufacturer Novo about this, and they've assured us that there is adequate supply for the pill. And just in general, if you take a step back from Novo and Wegovy specifically, pills are just easier to manufacture, cheaper, faster, right? And so we don't anticipate any supply shortages.
What do you think is the next frontier? I mean, this is a major step, going from injections to pill form, and like I said, all of it kind of eclipses what was going on 20 years ago with bariatric surgeries and things of that nature. So clearly we're moving in a step toward what people are wanting and seeking out. What do you think is the next frontier?
You use the words life-changing. These medications really are life-changing. Obviously, they've been approved for diabetes and obesity, weight loss, but they're also being approved and being studied in a variety of conditions, including Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration, as well as sleep apnea, things like that. So they're positioned or poised to treat a variety of different lifestyle and weight associated metabolic conditions. So I do think that with the expanded indications that these medications are going to get, you're going to see hopefully a much healthier population. And then in terms of the next frontier of innovation, we're seeing kind of the next generation of these GLP-1 drugs being studied, right? The drugs that are more targeted, more effective. And so I do think in the next few years, a whole host of top pharma companies are entering this space and are working on very innovative, effective drugs with minimal side effects, and working on, better mechanisms of delivery, right, that are easier for consumers and patients to take. So there's a lot of innovation going on in this space. I think there's just going to be more action as well, right, with new launches coming to market and so on.
And are we seeing the main consumers of these things U.S. consumers, or are we seeing another country that's really kind of out in the forefront of this?
We in the US are extremely lucky to have access to the most innovative treatments as soon as they're available and launched, right? But these medications, there's worldwide demand for these medications. And GLP-1s have now launched in a whole host of countries, including in Asia and Europe and so on. So this is going to be a worldwide thing.
It is very interesting to see, again, the evolution that we're all watching and a part of, really. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
All right, everybody, it's about 1:19 right now. Interesting conversation there. Again, the demand continues to grow. And yeah, we look at Wegovy as like a weight loss drug, but as she mentioned, it is used for many other things. So expanding the market so that people can have better access will help people with a lot of other things as well, far beyond just weight loss goals for 2026. We are going to take a quick break, just 2 minutes, and we're going to be back with a conversation with one of the reporters from our sister station about Governor Tim Walz now dropping out of the race for re-election. Stay with us. 2 minutes and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. 1:23 right now, and it's really important as we begin a new year that we kind of encapsulate, okay, what was the year that we just went through, and start to put together some idea of what is it that we are proceeding into now. And so we have our political reporter, Paris Schultz, who's kind of been doing these year-end, year-beginning raps with some of our political leaders. I know you had the mayor one-on-one last week, and this week we're starting off with Chicago Police Superintendent Larry Snelling. What's your focus for this?
Well, we want to talk about the year-end crime numbers with the superintendent, which we plan to interview in a couple hours here. And the fact that, you know, there was a 30% drop in homicides from around 587 to 416 or somewhere around that ballpark, which is not insignificant. And it wasn't the only thing that dropped. All violent crime categories, robberies, shootings, carjackings, all of them with significant drops. And, you know, certainly we try to focus our lens on crime when it's spiking and when it's going up and what the problems are and what the potential solutions are. But, you know, even when it's positive and there's a positive trend like this, I think it's equally as important to dig into, well, what's working and what can be doubled down on to continue this. Because, you know, no matter your political stripe, no matter where you live in Chicago, I think everybody is enthused about the notion of Chicago becoming a much safer city than it has, and going against that stereotype that we've seen. So obviously violent crime is still a big problem. It's still much higher in Chicago than LA or New York, but you know, matching with nationwide trends coming down. Let's dig in. I want to ask him, is there anything specifically that you put into place that you think is having you know, paying dividends? Is it the new state's attorney being a little more aggressive with incarceration requests? Is it the economy? Is it lack of guns? I don't, you know, I would just like to dig in because, you know, criminologists all kind of say the same thing. Well, we got to study it. We don't know. It could be any number of things. So let's try to figure out what is working and to see if the city can continue on that road.
Yeah, and if it's a national trend, how much of it is specific to Chicago and what we are doing here versus something that's happening nationally?
That's a great question. I don't think we know the answer to that, and there might be nothing specific to what's happening here versus nationally. But it would be useful to figure out, well, what is working nationwide? The only city that saw an increase in homicide was Los Angeles. So beyond that, every city saw a precipitous drop, some less than others. Chicago saw a higher drop than many cities. Baltimore saw a higher drop, 33%. Is that, there's some thought that it might be the billions of dollars in COVID relief money that did go to poverty programs and crime fighting programs and programs that maybe hadn't had the level of funding that we've seen the last few years because of this one-time injection of federal cash. And so if that's the case, where federal money that went to violence intervention, after school, workforce development, all those things are a part of the puzzle. All of those, when more people are gaining labor skills, then they're less apt to commit crime. When more people are going to school, when more people are getting a higher education degree, when more people are living in a neighborhood that has development in it, all of those things help. So if this COVID funding helped, then it's gone now, and will that cause that trend to go the other direction? I think a lot of criminologists are looking at that.
That, and even tracking some of these guns.
Yeah.
Are they getting more guns off of the street, or where were the guns coming from to begin with?
That's always the big obstacle in Chicago. If you listen to all of our police superintendents over the years, is that just the level of guns that they recover off the street, and I don't think that's changed. If anything, they've recovered more. So the guns that flow in here are still a huge obstacle. So the crime is decreasing in spite of that. And if we go through historical trends, yes, the majority of them come from outside of the city and from outside of Cook County, and much of it from outside of Illinois. Or states like Indiana, which gun traffickers and runners have taken advantage of how easy it is in states like that, to go to gun shows and be able to purchase, to have, they're really, I've done a lot of stories and reporting over the years on firearms, and really the main takeaway for me is the federal law is set up so that it's impossible to track weapons. It's hard to track who's purchasing them, and then once they're purchased, it's very hard to track whether they exchange hands. And case in point, when I had gone to a gun store about 5-6 years ago, the law was that when DEA came and did sporadic audits, they were not able to keep an electronic database of their sales. It was all paper and folders in drawers, and they say, well, that's the law. Like, we cannot enter anyone into a database. And so the laws have been set up to make it very difficult to put limits on the purchase of guns and the transfer of guns and the distribution of it. So that hasn't changed. And so the gains that we're seeing are in spite of those things, because I'm sure Snelling, when I talk to him, will tell me that's still number one, hurdle of his, is just all the guns that they recover from crime scenes, and the fact that it's just impossible to trace. I mean, I've talked to police superintendents over the years. Gary McCarthy, who is a contributor on our show, year after year after year after year said, there is no the violations for failing to report lost or stolen weapons is a slap on the wrist, and that needs to change. So everything has been set up to protect gun manufacturers and the gun industry, and make it very difficult to put any limits on those sales that anyone might want to put on them.
Yeah. You mentioned the DEA, and I would assume that a part of the conversation has to be, we really have not heard a lot from Superintendent Snelling over the last several months during all of the federal task force work that was taking place here in our area. I would imagine that has to be a part of the conversation in terms of the fine lines, quite honestly, that CPD had during Operation Midway Blitz.
Absolutely. I mean, that was the biggest story of the year, Operation Midway Blitz. And, I remember in the summer, the Superintendent Snelling very sternly getting up and saying, look, some of us are saying we should arrest law enforcement. We don't do that. We don't arrest other law enforcement. But I do want to ask him, now that we've had these court cases where it's come out in evidence that Commander Bovino and a lot of these federal immigration agents have acted outside the bounds of the law. Does that change his calculation at all? And given some of their very aggressive maneuvers, like high-speed chases, do you have second thoughts on whether this is hurting or helping public safety? So for sure, we want to drill down on the and maybe we ask him specifically about that case where the deputy of patrol, John Hine, was on social media, really raked over the coals for ostensibly shutting down, a police response to federal agents' calls. But there's still a lot of confusion as to what exactly happened. And now that we know, after the court cases, the initial narrative from federal agents just doesn't add up. There weren't a 10-car convoy ramming agents. We know that Marimar Martinez, the woman that was arrested, she was not threatening them with a gun. She had a gun, not on her person, but in the car. And it appeared that the federal agents fired the first shots. So, given all those things, I mean, what does the police superintendent think about how this has impacted public safety?
Yeah, and then one of the things that is just doing all kinds of numbers on our website, of course, right now, are the new laws that come into effect for 2026. And I would be very interested to find out which of those really help CPD in their efforts moving forward.
Well, I would say that they probably they don't see a whole lot coming down the pike that would necessarily help or strengthen their abilities. I mean, there's statewide laws in terms of where federal agents can conduct their operations,
and not just about the federal
agents have basically
issue.
said we don't need to abide by that.
Yeah, not just concerning the federal issue, but just in their ongoing efforts here throughout the city. Like, what are the things that have now become law that maybe they even pushed for that could help them?
Well, I mean, I think that that's a tough question. I mean, I think that the Safety Act is a law that has been impactful on police because it ostensibly has allowed for more folks to be out on the street that might have been incarcerated in the past. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of any law enforcement centered laws that have gone into place that would strengthen CPD's ability to police. I mean, unless I'm missing some, but I mean, it just seems over the last several years in Springfield, it's really been the opposite. It's been laws like the Safety Act, laws like police oversight, that have really been the direction the state is going. Will the pendulum shift on that? It just doesn't appear that that's the case at this point. So I'm having a hard time identifying laws that they would think would make their job easier. I mean, it just, but I could certainly ask the superintendent.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see if he feels the same way, that you're saying, or if there is something that he could readily recall that says, you know what, we really needed this.
Well, maybe you talk about, bans on assault weapons, although, those are being challenged and that'll go to the Supreme Court eventually, whether Illinois' assault weapons ban can hold. Obviously, most police superintendents feel very strongly that there should be a ban on military-style assault weapons in the hands of the public. So that is something certainly that's in limbo, but is impactful when you're a police officer. But yeah, I mean, I can for sure ask him that question.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what comes of your interview. I am very intrigued to finally hear from him. Like I said, we really have not heard from him in quite a while. And so whatever you're going over, whatever the line of questioning, wherever that takes you, I'm sure we'll be able to glean a lot from it.
Well, you brought up a good point, Anita. Okay, I think his, strategy has been to kind of keep his head down and just do the job and not get too involved. Well, not get involved at all in the politics. I mean, clearly he's had some perhaps private disagreements with Mayor Johnson. He thought ShotSpotter was beneficial. Mayor Johnson was against ShotSpotter. So, I mean, I think that Snelling enjoys high marks all across the city. One of the few public officials that really does. And so I think that he's tried to stay above the fray, keep his head down, do the job, just focus on public safety. And that's why you haven't seen him do so many of these one-on-ones. I mean, he's out there every now and then. So that's why, yes, I'm also intrigued to see, well, what does he really think? He has a lot of cachet, I think, because like we said, the mayor doesn't enjoy very high approval ratings, but the police superintendent does. And even for folks that don't like what the current mayor has done, they'll concede. But you know what? He knocked it out of the park on the choice for police superintendent. So Snelling certainly, his point of view is going to be valuable, in terms of all of these issues and how Chicago can improve on the public safety front next year. I mean, who would know better than him?
Yep. And really, that's what it's all about, looking back, but then also looking forward. So, Paris, we will see you this afternoon and evening for more of your interview, one-on-one interview now with Superintendent Snelling. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks, Anita.
Okay. All right. Everybody, it's 1:37. And as promised, we do have our reporter now from our sister station in Minnesota, in Minneapolis to be exact, Corinne Hoggard of Fox 9, who is joining me now to talk a little bit about the breaking news this morning, a big announcement from Governor Tim Walz that he will not now be seeking re-election. Thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, Anita. Yeah, that was kind of a shock to us here in Minnesota, although I told our own anchors here, maybe the timing is a shock, maybe the decision not so much, because I've been hearing in the background for months, even before I think, the focus of an entire nation came to Minnesota for fraud and for a few other negatives here. I was hearing that, Governor Walz really didn't want to be in this race for a third term here. I'll go back, a little ways. June 14th here in Minnesota, we had the assassination of Melissa Hortman, our Speaker Emerita, and her husband, and then a couple of other shootings involving a state senator and his wife. And I think that was the day that Governor Walz ended up kind of in this race. I think he wanted Melissa Hortman to take the mantle and run with it. And suddenly she wasn't available. And then we had a big church/school shooting here not long after that. And I think that Governor Walz was steeled to run and to try to implement more gun safety laws here in Minnesota. And then I think the reality of the fraud following him at every single press conference, no matter what the topic here. He could be talking about our new paid leave law. He could be talking about, something good happening at the marathon. And the questions would come to him about fraud. And I think, also he was a target of the president and the national GOP. And I think that was part of his reason for maybe not necessarily really feeling like he wanted to run. And I do believe in the background, he was trying to see if there was another candidate who could take the mantle and run with it in our Democratic Party here in Minnesota. And I believe he's found it, although we haven't gotten confirmation. I did talk to Senator Amy Klobuchar's, some of the people who are close to her, and they have confirmed that she's been asked to run by a lot of people. They wouldn't tell me if Tim Walz was one of them, but they say she's been asked. She is considering the job, but she hasn't quite made a decision yet. And I expect that to be the DFL candidate here. She is now the odds-on favorite to win that nomination on the Democratic side and be their nominee in November.
Very, very interesting because, of course, she was really the first person to come out, swinging from the rafters in support of Tim Walz when he was selected as a vice presidential candidate next to Kamala Harris.
Right. She is definitely, she and Governor Walz are definitely aligned. I don't know what her kind of mindset is around running for the governor's mansion here, but because I don't have access to her typically. She's not around here that much. I get a lot of the behind the scenes stuff of our legislators and things like that, but not so much from the DC folks. But I can say, the fraud here, the GOP has made it an issue, and it has made it stick to Tim Walz. Today, they have started trying to spread the blame to the entire Democratic Party here in Minnesota. And we'll see whether that is a tactic that works. But if it is Senator Klobuchar, she's someone who wasn't here in Minnesota. She was, working on behalf of Minnesota in DC. The fraud would, likely stick to her much less than it would to one of our state legislators.
I could totally see that. Do you think that this is still kind of left over? I mentioned his brief run, albeit for vice president. Is some of this, yes, the nation's eyes have been on him the last couple of months because of the fraud investigation, but really the nation's eyes have been on him since he assumed that part of the ticket, the presidential ticket. So were his aspirations ever really on running again, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think that he was convinced to run by people within the party who thought that he was the best candidate. And I think that maybe, those same people may have come to the realization that he probably wasn't, given the taint of so much fraud here. Federal prosecutors have proved at least $350 million already, and it's likely to climb to, somewhere around at least $1 billion. And, they did throw out a much bigger number that they haven't proved yet. But that's a lot of money over a lot of years. I've been covering politics here in Minnesota for 3 years now. The first fraudsters charged happened before I even got here. And yet, in the last month or so, the FBI is still out there serving warrants for fraud. And so, there's a good argument to be made that whatever needed to be done to cut off fraud hadn't happened. It happened under the governor's watch. And he did say that the buck stops with him today. I think you kind of touched on this. His profile was raised significantly nationally because he was Kamala Harris's choice as a running mate. And so, when Philadelphia happened last year, when Chicago happened, the convention, I think suddenly he became more of a target of the national GOP as well. And that's gotten him a lot of negative attention from folks like President Trump, from, folks who are YouTube influencers, things like that. He has become a target. And that's not, I don't think he's the kind of person who lets something like that derail him. But it also is just another factor when he's a guy who I don't think really wanted to run. When you just kind of put all of these negative weights around his neck, the albatross just gets so heavy that I think he eventually tried to convince other folks that they should be in the running instead of him. And I did talk to some of his aides after his announcement today, and they said that, he made this decision probably a week ago. He was just sitting with it to make sure it was right for a week. And they said that it's the happiest week that he's had in quite some time, at least, in the last 20 months.
Yeah, I'm sure he feels a lot freer at this point in time, especially now to have said it, so publicly. So I want to ask you a couple of things going back to the fraud allegations and the investigations there. One, where do things stand? You mentioned the YouTuber. So there's, there's a couple of different fraud allegations that we're talking about. The YouTuber brought up the whole daycare fraud, but there are a couple of different fraud investigations that really encompass this entire controversy.
Yep. I think that the daycares, the latest from the city or the state is that, 9 of the 10 daycare centers are still operating that were in the video. They are all operating as you would expect them to. A few of them, I think 4 are currently under investigation, but they are operating. But that's just, one piece of the puzzle here when it comes to fraud. We've got a lot of systems. We have fraud in the educational Feeding Our Future, it's known as here, but it's just a program trying to make sure kids were fed. Big fraud there, big fraud in our housing stabilization services, which was a Medicaid program designed to get veterans, recent drug addicts, things like that into stable housing. That program's been canceled because of the amount of fraud in it. In all, the state has designated 14 of the Medicaid programs to be high risk. That includes housing stabilization. So now 13 of them are deemed high risk. They're not paying out of those things until they verify everything. So, for example, autism centers is one of the 14 high risk areas. And I last week talked to a woman who runs 3 autism centers. She's been doing it for 20 plus years. Legitimate place. She has a lot of, people on the spectrum in there that they take care of, that they have given brand new hope to a lot of parents and caretakers that maybe these people will be able to turn the corner and live somewhat normal lives. And they submitted their billing to the state and they won't get paid.
Oh, wow.
And they are told that it's 90 days without payment. So there's, there is fraud. It's terrible, but it's also claimed some innocent victims here, it seems. And that means that some of these legitimate programs may not be able to last. And so it's kind of it's a big deal here. And it just keeps getting wider, and we stay tuned to federal prosecutors and state auditors and everybody trying to cut it out. But again, like I said, it had already started long before I got here, and it hadn't been stopped as of, last month. So ongoing issue, and, the buck stops in the governor's office.
Wow. And so when we say the buck stops in the governor's office, I ask you, major announcement today. Do you think it's the last major announcement that we're hearing when it comes to Governor Walz?
Oh, no, not at all. I think he'll still be active. I think he will be, let's see. Amy Klobuchar, if she is the candidate, has a machine behind her. She has run for president. She has been, a very effective, hardworking politician for a long time. She knows what she's doing. Talked to a political analyst earlier today who said she won't make any of the mistakes that Walz and his team have made, including downplaying fraud as a campaign issue. They didn't. It as recently as this summer said that it wasn't polling as a serious issue on the minds of independents, and that kind of mistake Amy Klobuchar, a former prosecutor, isn't going to make. And so I do believe, though, that Governor Walz will still be out there, and I think this gives him the opportunity to not have to worry about a campaign, which maybe frees him up to help do a lot more of the kind of pushing all of the buttons to make sure that the rest of his DFL counterparts have the right kind of positioning when their campaigns come around in November. We'll see. Maybe there's the other side of that is if this sticks to him and him alone, and maybe you don't want Tim Walz at your campaign event because he's the face of fraud potentially. But so we'll see how that works out. But I don't think this will be the last we hear from him. He actually didn't take any questions at the announcement today, but he did promise us that he's doing a press conference tomorrow about the new paid leave program we have here in Minnesota, and he said he'd take questions then. I imagine everybody there knows that we'll be there. We'll hear what he has to say about paid leave, but we'll be there because we want to know why he made this decision and why he made it now, especially.
Yeah. So many different things that you're sifting through. And then, I wonder what it says about like his legacy. For someone who was like a beloved coach that kind of rose up to being governor, and then, he's not a one-term governor. For this to be the end, possibly, of his time in politics, what that says kind of about his legacy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what his legacy is. If you ask the GOP around here right now, his legacy is all the fraud. If you ask the DFL, it's, free meals for kids. It's this paid leave program. It's, all of the accomplishments of the 2023 Democratic-run legislature that he signed all the bills with. So that kind of, codifying abortion rights and, legalizing cannabis and, things like that. So it's, he's got some marks on both sides of the ledger, let's say, and it'll be interesting to see how he's remembered in 2027, 2028.
Well, I'm sure you have a big job ahead of you, kind of sifting through it all. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, you take care. It's 1:52, everyone. Let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. 1:55 right now. Let's take you to Wall Street here and kind of see how things are shaping up in terms of our stocks for today. We are sitting in the green. Great to see that again as we start a new year. But boy, the stock market is going to be very interesting here as we look for several things over the next few days and weeks. But right now, very positive at the moment. We're up almost 675 points for the Dow Jones. These stocks rising today. And this is even after the attack on Venezuela and the capture of the president there. Crude oil prices have seen some gains. Of course, there is a bigger discussion about oil and who will kind of oversee the oil market that is primarily coming from Venezuela in the days, weeks, months, years to come here. But the Dow Jones, again, doing very well at the moment. Hit an all-new high today in the session earlier today at 764 points at one point. The S&P 500 is advancing today, as well as the NASDAQ composite here. Again, they're looking at some energy stocks that have led the gains on the notion that companies would benefit from rebuilding Venezuela's oil infrastructure. So this is huge. The news coming from over the weekend that's having big implications moving forward here with the attack and the capture there in Venezuela of their president and his wife, also their son, and looking at this as a significant geopolitical event now. So we'll continue to watch what happens. Obviously, we're waiting on a few other things in terms of interest rate points in the next few weeks as well. But for now, seeing a bit of a boost. And things are looking very good at the moment. So let's capture this. Hopefully we see more of this in the weeks to come, but there's quite a bit that could shake things up, and so we'll watch it very closely here. It's about 1:58. We're going to take another quick break, just about 2 minutes, and then we're going to work to bring in another report. This is going to be on, since we are talking kind of about things that are happening internationally that have major impacts on things that happen here nationally. We're going to talk about the unrest that's happening in Iran. Let's take a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. Just a minute after 2 o'clock now, and as again, a brand new hour here on Chicago Live. Let me talk a little bit about where we're going from here. So we have several things that are planned for this hour. We're looking to get in one of our reporters on what's happening in Venezuela and here in the U.S. Since the capture of Nicolás Maduro and his wife and son over the weekend. We should have that shortly before we get to the 3 o'clock hour. We're also going to look at what's happening with our weather around here in our area. Things have been quite nice today, but we'll see where things are going moving forward. And speaking of that, when we say it's been quite nice, a lot of the ice and snow that we've seen over the last several days is starting to melt. And we're seeing a rise in reports of people walking on ice. Not a good thing. So we're going to talk about ice dangers for people who have had maybe a temptation to get out there. Not a time when you want to get out there walking on the ice right now. It's not going to hold you up. And we'll also delve into a new committee that's been formed here in our area, a task force that's been created to look at specifically violence against women, children, vulnerable communities. That's just been set up. But first, I mentioned before we went to break how many of the things that we see as geopolitical events come right back here to home. And so we have Robert Pape from University of Chicago. He is a professor of political science, specializing in international security affairs, to talk a little bit more about the demonstrations that are happening in Iran. And thank you so much for your time.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So we're on day 9, if I'm correct, of these demonstrations that really started about inflation and the devaluation of their currency, and now it's moved into different territory.
That's exactly right. So for a long period of time, the Trump administration has been looking for opportunities to have agitation against the government in Iran. This was true in the first Trump administration. This is true in the second Trump administration. And it is now happening. Now, how far this will go is a different story, because Iran is a regime that is willing to use force against its own people. So we need to be very, very mindful of that. What President Trump has done, though, is he's responded. He's responded to that possibility by making a threat. Not clear we're now going to be able to execute on that threat, but this is where we stand at the moment. There are protests. The regime doesn't appear to be falling at the moment. However, the real issue is, if the regime uses force against its people, is America just going to forget about the threat that it made, or is it actually going to fall through?
Yeah, and when you say threat, I mean, President Trump said the U.S. is locked and loaded. And to think back to the attacks, the operation that took place in Iran just last year.
That's right. And if your leaders in Iran hear, what you are hearing is threats of B-2 strikes against you. A leadership strike, a decapitation strike against you personally. So when it says locked and loaded, that may just sound like bravado. But the locking and loading here are probably B-2s in Montana ready to go. And we're talking about maybe a 12-hour mission. We know what these look like from Operation Midnight Hammer. So this is a real threat. This is a real possibility. The real issue with carrying this out is not that we don't have B-2s and not that we couldn't do it, is, are we really willing to get involved with leadership decapitation strikes in Iran now that we've just decapitated the regime in Venezuela? This would be a truly astounding event on top of astounding events of the last few days.
Yeah, and so that goes back into the whole geopolitical aspect of this, because you have to wonder how the heads of other states, other countries, other nations are looking at all of this.
Well, in the last few years, so I spend time, I've taught for the U.S. Air Force, I've advised every White House since 9/11, including the first Trump White House, not this White House, at least not yet. So I have, and I've also talked to governments in the last year. So it is not going to maybe come as a surprise. They're no longer just simply wondering what Trump is going to do next. They're already starting to take these threats pretty seriously. Now, they're not using military force against us, certainly not anything on the horizon here. But that said, you'll recall back in April, governments decided to not buy our treasury bonds. And the people listening may say, well, treasury bonds, who care? Well, no, this is really what scared Trump about the tariffs. It's what led his Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, to come running into the Oval Office. Sir, we've got to pull back on the tariffs. And that is what caused Trump to first start pulling back on the tariffs. So there are things that governments around the world can do. They may be a little subtle and a little hard for the public to see, but they will definitely get the attention of the Trump administration.
And is it at all ironic that these people, again, started their protest over the economy when obviously the economy right now isn't even a high mark for President Trump?
Yes, I'm sorry to say this promise of helping others, much like when he mentioned he would help the people of Venezuela, the publics here are just low down on the totem pole of the constituencies that Trump is concerned about. And so much higher are going to be his own direct allies here. This would be Netanyahu in the case of the possible Iran strike, another Iran strike. This would be the oil companies in the case of Venezuela. Next on the list is going to be MAGA itself, because you can bet farmers in Iowa and elsewhere are saying, moi, where is mine? What's going on here? They didn't sign up for forever wars. In fact, what they signed up for was the opposite of these forever wars, because the whole idea was supposed to be help MAGA at home now. Well, this is good. So we're going to discover, I think, that the publics in Iran, publics in Venezuela, they're pretty far down on the totem pole of beneficiaries as Trump sees it.
Yeah, you're so right. The America First aspect of that, but where does that come into play here? So, as you mentioned, B2s, okay, are they ready at certain bases? When we just saw what happened over the weekend in Venezuela, I believe, was it 150 that were used in this in some type of aircraft or type of craft, let's just say that were used in the operation there. Are we possibly, are we stretched too thin when we're looking at what's happened there in this?
We are stretched thin. I think what would be helpful for your audience is it's not really the case that it's incoherent what President Trump is doing. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to fail disastrously. But here's what I think is going on in the Trump administration's mind. What they think they are doing, and they articulate this in their national security strategy they put out a few weeks ago, is they see themselves as becoming a hegemon in the Western Hemisphere, and that means controlling the oil and resources in the Western Hemisphere directly from the White House, not through trade deals and buying them on the open market, but directly from the White House. We used to call this imperialism here. We have never seen an American president do this, but this is what is novel about what President Trump is doing. And then the armada that he put in place off of Venezuela, it has 10,000 Marines on it. Why would you have 10,000? Well, that's way too small to control Caracas or 25, 30 million Venezuelans. That is about the size you would need to control the oil fields in Venezuela, at least at a first order. And so what I think he thinks he's doing is seizing the resources. Wouldn't be surprised if he starts talking about sovereign wealth fund again, coming back. The big problem here is this is not the 19th century. This is not the 18th century. There's a lot of ways for the world to push back on imperialism. That's why these empires ended and haven't come back. And what you are likely to see is a surprising amount of resistance inside of Venezuela to America stealing the oil here. And this is going to be quite a serious problem for the Trump administration going forward. But it's not because the policy is exactly incoherent. It's just a dead-end policy that's not going to produce any real meaningful results.
Yeah, and the Trump administration has tied Venezuela to Iran. How so? How do they make that connection?
Well, Iran, oil. So let's first of all see that there are a handful of places that have oil. We can really count them here. We have Iran, we have Iraq, we have Saudi Arabia, we have Venezuela, and also we have Canada. These are the places that President Trump has focused on in the last year. He's also added Greenland to the list. So what you are seeing is President Trump is really quite interested in doing a lot in oil-rich countries. And this is not just about Iran with a nuclear weapon. Iran is an oil-producing country of the first order. And so this is why Iran has President Trump's attention. It's not just the Israel lobby. It's not just Israel. Iran has oil. And so we need to be mindful going forward, however, that Iran is 100 million people. They're not going to want to give the oil to America either. So this whole policy of imperialism, this is not a policy that has a good future for America.
And before we came to you, we were looking at the stock market. Things looked great today. Obviously,
as I said on the media on Saturday. So I've been doing media here for 2 days, and I said on the media that I did on Saturday, don't be surprised the stock market goes up. Why is that? President Trump has promised money to the oil companies, and people are, even though the money hasn't come, they're hearing that. So that's got to start to get priced in. I think they're going to be disappointed as time goes on. I think there's very little chance Trump's going to control that oil in Venezuela. Venezuela is primed for insurgency. It's got the jungles of Vietnam. It's got the mountains of Afghanistan. It is the terrain that is perfect for guerrillas, terrorists, insurgents here. And to operate that oil field, those oil fields, he needs civilian contractors. Those Marines can't operate those fields. They don't have the training. So you're going to need to bring in civilians, and those civilian contractors, they're probably just not going. This would be pretty dangerous for them, even with the Marines there.
Yeah, I meant that aspect of it we even saw in the days leading up to the attack there in Venezuela, when people, I think there were like 5 Americans who were taken captive.
Absolutely. This is going to be a very, it's gotten more dangerous. The best day for the Venezuela operation was Saturday. The second best day was Sunday, and every day on here forward, it's going to dwindle. And the reason is because this is a mission we simply can't do, even with our fantastic military. The idea that we're really going to we're not going to just embargo oil in Venezuela. We're talking about taking the profits from the oil for ourselves. That's black gold. That's gold that is, they want, a lot of people are going to want that money. And the last thing they're going to want to do is hand this off to the White House.
Do you think that, one of the aspects of what we're watching in Venezuela, people will say they don't like the tactics that were used there by the U.S., but you do see people also cheering for the capture of Nicolás Maduro, who was not a favorable leader for many people. Do you think we'll see something of the same with these threats that we're leveling at Iran?
We see this so I've been studying regime changes for 30 years. I taught for the U.S. Air Force, big books on these subjects and so forth. We often see this. In the opening days, it's kind of like a honeymoon period because these are bad people. This Maduro's a criminal boss, essentially, like a mafia boss. Nobody thinks he's a good guy. There's a lot of other countries around the world that have bad people running them. The problem is what happens in the days after, what happens down the road, and how this unfolds, and that's where these all come unglued. There's no military operation of a regime change or occupation that we've done in the last 30 years, or Israel has done in the last 30 years, or Russia has done in the last 30 years that's come out well. It's just not the case. And it's not because of the differences in the militaries. It's because trying to control countries, foreigners trying to control other countries, that's a 19th century thing when those foreigners didn't have radios and the internet and lots of guns and lots of bullets and lots of bombs. None of that was actually there, not even the guns and bombs in the 18th and 19th century. So when you controlled a country in the 18th or 19th century, you just took a port, essentially. That's what we called imperialism then. This is a very, very different world. So we have not been able to have colonies to control countries essentially since World War II because we spread all these small arms around the world. We just can't do it. And so that's what's going to happen here. We're going to see this problems get worse and worse and worse here, not necessarily tomorrow, but over the coming weeks and coming months, as we saw in Iraq, as we saw in Libya, as Israel saw in Lebanon. I can go on and on.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different examples. Thank you so much for your time. As you said, we're going to have to watch these things in the weeks and the months to come, and so I'm sure we'll be calling you back. Thank you.
Glad to speak with you.
Same. All right. 2:18 right now. Let's take a quick break, everyone, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. It's about 2:20 right now, and there are new efforts right now to get leaders together, bring them together to focus on the health and the safety of women, children, and vulnerable communities here in the city of Chicago and throughout Cook County. In fact, there's a new Violence Against Women's Task Force, and I'm happy to have Commissioner Donna Miller, who is with me now, to talk a little bit more about this as a sponsor. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's great to be here. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year. Good to see you in this new year. Tell me a little bit about the effort to bring this together to fruition.
Well, yeah, thank you for focusing on this. I know there's so many things going on right now, but this is an issue that has been going on for quite some time, and it's only been getting worse. As a Cook County Commissioner, I'm really proud that I was able to help lead countywide efforts to combat domestic violence, and recently formed this task force in conjunction with the City of Chicago. It's going to be the first ever City of Chicago countywide domestic violence task force. And I want to thank also Alderwoman Taveras for leading efforts on the city side. We have just seen a rise in domestic violence at an unprecedented rate. I believe it's unprecedented because domestic violence has increased for all violent crimes recently. A 26% increase of all violent crimes are domestic violence from 2025. And I put together a task force. I put together this task force as a result of having a domestic violence hearing back in July, and we focused on domestic violence and domestic relations, and many of these go hand in hand. So we heard some powerful testimony from many survivors, advocates, and community stakeholders. This hearing lasted 7.5 hours long, and it really could have gone another 7.5 hours. But there's just so much to talk about.
When we say a lot to talk about, I think it's, people will say, well, what moves beyond talk? What action will come from a task force like this?
Well, the task force goals, we haven't had our first meeting yet. We're going to have our first meeting in the next week or so. And we're going to make formal recommendations to the City of Chicago, to the City Council, to the President of the County Board, and with all the Cook County Commissioners on board as well. We want to look at specific issues that we can actually do something about to help not only victims of domestic violence who are going through the process, but for future victims as well. One of the biggest things that came out of this hearing was the orders of protection process, either being not served properly or being served in a way that did not provide the best benefit or not harm to the person that the order of protection was supposed to support. So those are things that we want to come out of the task force. Like, how can we improve orders of protection? How can we improve legislation on the stalking no contact statute, which most people don't even know that there's a difference between an order of protection and a stalking no contact? And how can we make sure that we're also getting recordings of all domestic relation cases? And the last thing that came out is many of the women who testified also had children involved in these cases. And we need to improve the guardian ad litem process and have any issues that affect children addressed first and foremost.
Yeah, there are lapses, if you will, in the system that have come to light, especially in the last couple of years. There were this month, last year, starting a brand new year, and there were some heavy cases that I remember us following, having to do with many of the issues that you're addressing with this task force. Were there a couple of instances that really resonated with you to make you want to seek this out?
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, no one should lose their life, right? And we heard from so many victims and relatives. One that stood out was the brother of a victim who was murdered. His sister was murdered as a result of her abuser getting out on electronic monitoring and came and took her life. He has turned into a huge advocate to advocate for his sister. But we've also heard from many other victims who didn't lose their life, but are still in the system for years and years and years on end. And we want to advocate for those people as well. There were 47 people killed in 2025, according to the Chicago police data, that were victims of domestic violence cases. And we want this task force to serve as a way that we can get that number down to zero. We don't want anyone to lose their life. We also don't want children living in fear of having to visit their abuser, who's someone who abused their mother. They have visitation rights. The children are in fear. We also don't want women, and there are some men who also testified. So we don't want to negate the fact that men are also victims of domestic violence. And orders of protection did not stop their abusers either. So we need the order of protection. That's the first and foremost. We're going to hear testimony from many different departments throughout the city of Chicago and the county on how we can improve that process.
Yeah, so much of the work of police departments does revolve around things that start at home with domestic violence. Who's on your task force?
Well, the people who are going to be on the initial part of the task force are going to be commissioners from Cook County. There's going to be alder people as well, and different agencies from the city of Chicago, from Cook County. And then we're going to have our very important domestic violence advocates who've been a huge part of this entire process. We're going to hear from the Domestic Relations Court. We're going to hear from Domestic Violence Court. We're going to hear from Juvenile Justice, the Chief Judge Office, and the executive team. So everyone is going to have input because there's pieces of every aspect of these cases in every one of those instances, right? So we can't do necessarily, we're not here to try cases. That's not going to be the focus of the task force, but to hear where we can make recommendations that we're hearing out of the cases that might be existing on how we can make recommendations for improvement. And that's all people want, that they want to have not only their cases resolved, but they want to see an improvement in the process.
Yeah, and everyone wants to feel heard, so that's a part of it as well. Obviously, I introduced you as a commissioner, but we know that you are also running for higher office right now. Is this something that you're making as a part of your platform for seeking that office and for Congress in the 2nd District?
Absolutely, because this is not just a city of Chicago, a Cook County issue. This is a national issue that we see on the rise. And I do believe in duplicative processes. So whatever's happening here, we can take that to other jurisdictions and have them apply the same sort of information that we get from our task force to what's going on in their jurisdictions, with their advocates, with their court systems. So I definitely would like to take this on the national level because we see it affecting so many communities and so many people have been experiencing domestic violence increases, not just here in our area.
Yeah, and of course, domestic violence is nothing new. Where do you think we've gotten things wrong before that you all are trying to correct or just do more of now?
I think the process, the overwhelmingly issue that we heard over and over again was about the orders of protection. Orders of protection not being filed on a consistent basis, not being filed on a timely basis, and not being followed. So we need the order of protection process to work to actually protect who it's meant to protect, and taken seriously when someone does call. We did hear of instances where maybe they just said, well, he's at it again. No, we cannot be at it again. We cannot just say, oh, here he goes again, because that can result in someone losing their life. And that has resulted in the loss of life in many instances. So I think that's one of the biggest issues that we want to tackle. How do we do that? Do we need to legislate different things from the State House? We want to make recommendations that we might take to Springfield. Then, like you mentioned, this could be federal legislation as well, the things that we can have ask the federal government to step in and intervene in to help our police departments with better equipment, with better monitoring, with better resources, so that they're able to combat domestic violence issues from a simple order of protection so it doesn't lead to loss of life.
Well, if it saves a life, certainly it's something that we appreciate you being a part of. Thank you so much for your time and your efforts.
Thank you so much.
All
Good
right.
to see you.
Take care. Good to see you as well. It's 2:30, everyone. I think that is such an important conversation, and we really this time last year we really did see some horrific cases that rose to just the level of us covering for quite some time. Whether it was the actual incident or the court cases that followed after that, several of them that happened in January that we were still following up until June and July in those court cases that happened. But ultimately, regardless of the justice that might happen at the end of it, at the beginning of it, you asked the question, could it have been prevented in any type of way? So seeing that there are efforts to try to save more lives is really important. All right, let's take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. .233 right now as we give you a live look outside, and you can see it's a beautiful day. Traffic's moving along. Occasionally we have a runner out there, and you look a little closer and you see little patches of snow and ice, remnants of what was as things begin to warm up a bit here in our area. So it might seem a little odd to those of you who are seeing this and listening to me right now that we got an ice shelf warning. Yeah. This is from the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, and they say that they have once again seen an uptick of social media posts in several states of people venturing out on Lake Michigan's shelf ice. Did you see what we saw? Because there wasn't a whole lot of ice there for people to venture out onto, but they say that that's exactly what people are doing, finding the patches and going out on it for clicks. Dave Benjamin, the executive director for Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, is joining me now to talk about what they're seeing and the major danger that this poses. Thank you for joining me.
Sure. Thank you for having me on today.
So, one, I mean, when we say an uptick, like what type of increase are you seeing?
I mean, we didn't put numbers to it, but it's almost daily that I'm seeing new posts, new pictures on social media, especially Facebook, where people are sharing, their pictures of themselves. And there's also several drone operators that work out of like Northwest Indiana and Michigan that, they're out there, getting, stunning views all the time, and they're capturing these people out there in their images as well.
How, when I say, the danger that this poses, how dangerous is it?
So if you think of, say, like a small pond or inland lake, when it freezes, it can freeze over from, one shore to the other shore. The entire thing is, a sheet of ice. Whereas with the shoreline, you have the open water on the outside, and the shore, it freezes at the shoreline. And so the way the shelf ice starts to freeze, it freezes at the shoreline. The shallower waters, the colder, it gets, the longer, days of duration, it starts to spread out. But then when we get a little bit of a thaw, we get some wind and wave activity. These waves will break up the ice on the shoreline. Now you have a bunch of ice chunks. And then when it gets another cold front, these ice chunks fuse together. So really it's, reforming in an unstable format, to think of it like that. And then, again, we have these deep freezes, and then we get snow cover, and then we get some thaws. It's just kind of a constant, instability that's going on. In addition, even when it is like a solid, near the shoreline, and we have waves breaking on the outside, those waves breaking on the outside is forcing water underneath the shelf ice moving towards the shoreline. And when it gets to shallower water, it has nowhere to go but up. So it can start going through cracks or crevices, making these larger holes, and then it becomes like we call an ice volcano. The water is spouting out, it's spraying, and then a mound starts to build up. So, it could be a very attractive nuisance. People aren't familiar with it. When the beach is snow covered, you might not know where the beach ends and the water begins. And then people see hills. They have a natural tendency to want to climb the hill. And if you get to the top of this ice mountain, it's going to be the most delicate part where, froze last and it's the thinnest. You could fall into this ice cavern. So, there's just a lot of hazards and dangers that go along with this. It could break away from the shoreline as well with people on it. And we've seen on some of these videos where they're dangerously close to the edge of the shoreline ice where the open water is, and you could see the waves hitting it and parts of it, peeling away or falling into the water. So it's really, really a dangerous situation. If you were to end up in the water, it's really not going to be a rescue opportunity because, rescue is way too far away, and this is not a easy type of rescue for first responders to attempt to make.
My. And obviously, it then endangers their lives if they do try to come out and save you.
Right. And it could be, a person falls through the ice. You're going to have the immediate friends or bystanders that then may be risking their lives, falling through the ice as well. And then, so now you can have multiple victims, and end up in this situation. And then something that you had mentioned at the beginning of the thing, saying that there's like little bits of, shelf ice. Well, in Chicago and, parts of Northwest Indiana, the shelf ice might only be like 20 yards out. But as you go up into Northwest Indiana and Michigan, if you go to Grand Haven, that shelf ice is extending about 300, 400 yards out. Now, we also need to understand that, one day you could have an open beach and then we get strong north winds and it can blow, the, floating icebergs chunks to the shoreline and then it refuses. So, this is constantly changing and reformatting where, again, it's just an unstable ice patch that people are going out on and can be very dangerous.
You all mentioned the shock and the types of things that your body goes through if you end up going into that water. Can you talk a little bit more specifically about that?
Yeah, what's widely referred to as the 1-10-1 rule of hypothermia. So if you had sudden immersion in cold water, you have 1 minute to control your breathing, 10 minutes of meaningful movement, and less than 10 minutes until hypothermia may kill you.
Wow.
So going a little deeper into this, if you had sudden immersion in cold water, it causes a hyperventilation gas reflex where you're just like, you're going to inhale involuntarily. And it's very, very hard to stop that or resist it. So if you can't stay at the surface by floating or hanging onto the ice for that first minute, you're going to be gasping on air and inhaling water and you're going to submerge. If you can stay at the surface, whether it's floating or hanging on for that first minute, get your breathing under control, then you'll have 10 minutes of meaningful movement, meaning that you may be able to use your arms and legs to, swim, crawl out of the ice hole. And then less than 1 minute of being in the water, that hypothermia can cause a cardiac event, and it's a heart attack, and you're deceased in the water, unfortunately. So again, it's really not a good situation to be in. It's best just to avoid it altogether.
Yeah, and I mean, sometimes it's somebody chasing after a dog or, a pet that runs out onto the ice.
Right. And we've heard of that situation, whether it's an inland lake or Lake Michigan. So if your pet falls through the ice, you're a human, you obviously weigh more than the pet. So if you're trying to go out and rescue the pet, you're likely going to fall through the ice as well. Now, pets have, their fur coat. It's somewhat insulated. They're going to last longer if they can stay at the surface. Call 911, have professional rescues attempt the rescue, because the last thing is whenever we have a dog that gets caught out in the water, whether it's ice or summertime, it's the dog owner that usually perishes trying to rescue the dog, and the dog's eventually either rescued or self-rescues, and now the dog is an orphan without its parent or pet owner.
Oh, it's so sad. I mean, but preventable. Sad, but preventable.
Yes.
Can you address the current? Because I do think most people don't associate ice with having a current.
Yeah. Again, Lake Michigan is a big body of water. It's 300 miles from north to south, 118 miles east to west. We always have some wind traveling over the water, and winds create dangerous currents. So even if it's not a wavy day, we can still have currents because we have these solid structures, these piers that stick out into the water. The water is, has some flow with it, and it's going to go around these piers. Now, when we have these waves breaking on the end of the shore ice and it's pushing the water underneath, that's a current going towards shore. Again, when it gets to a shallow area, the water's going to go up or it's going to go out to the side. So there's currents flowing under these ice shelves. In addition to that, in some areas where there might be a boat channel from a harbor that goes out into the lake, that from like one pier, boat channel, to the other pier can freeze over. And there's currents moving under that as well. And that's very deep water. And if you were to fall through there, that current might just pull you right under the ice, and there is no rescue possibility. It just haunts me hearing like something like that.
Yeah, and you all mentioned that when something like that happens, a body might not be recovered for months.
Yeah, we have had instances. It's almost, unfortunately, every spring where, April, May, a couple people might be washed ashore in Northwest Indiana or Michigan. And then when they're later identified, because they've been in the water for an extended period of time, they may have gone missing in December or January or February from the Illinois-Chicago side, but the prevailing west winds blows them across to the Michigan side. So it's unfortunate. So one thing is, we don't know, was that a shelf ice incident? We don't know how they entered in the water unless somebody had witnessed it or there was some type of surveillance camera that captured it, which is often rare because you would have to know, when and where and what date to look at. So
yeah,
that is one unfortunate thing that happens almost every spring.
I'm sure you all have issued warnings for many, many years, but do you think that just the popularity of social media is increasing this like tenfold?
That's likely what's going on because, everybody posts what they're doing on social media now. So it might not be necessarily an uptick of people going out on the ice. We really don't know, but we know that there's just an uptick of us being able to see it. So when I'm seeing new posts almost daily, beginning, end of December, early January, and they're new posts, new pictures, and the thing is, we know that the air temp is going to be up in the 50s by Thursday, and ice stays frozen even when it gets warmer, but people still may venture out. So we want to get this information out. It's going to become very, very unstable in the next couple days.
Wow. Well, I certainly appreciate you all issuing the warning. Let me ask you this. I mean, hey, we are not in any way wanting people to go out there. But let's say somebody does, or they see somebody who does. What advice do you give to the person who's trying to instruct the person who goes in the water, or heaven forbid it's that person, it's you, that goes into the water, to try to extend the time period or to try to just save their life?
If we saw someone out there, you'd want to, wave them in. Not many people carry whistles, although things have kind of changed a little bit. Seems like people are carrying a lot of whistles with the other ice this year. But having some type of a noisemaker, visually, waving them in, and just overall water safety, people really aren't, familiar with that. Drowning is one of the leading causes of unintentional death in the nation and the world. And when we look at, nationwide, it's the 5th leading cause of unintentional or accidental death. And, when you start, going to more risky situations like an ice shelf, you're, increasing the probability of having that unintentional injury death. So, it's just the bottom line, one of the things that we look at this is really what we need, big picture is water safety school curriculums, not just in the Great Lakes region, but nationwide. Water safety, drowning prevention is a public health issue, and it doesn't get treated like a public health issue. It gets treated like a recreation issue. So we need this so we can get, blanket coverage, kindergarten through 12th grade, as well as their parents. And a water safety school curriculum would be the fastest approach to reach the largest audience in the shortest amount of time that would have the maximum impact, for those that are most at risk. And Illinois has kindergarten through 6th grade as part of the required education, but it's not being completely fulfilled. We would like to see that extended to 12th grade. Indiana, Senate Bill 123 has a water safety education bill going through legislature right now that will hopefully pass, that will require a K through 12. And then Michigan has a House bill and a Senate bill. It's kind of stalled right now that would require the same K through 12 water safety education. This isn't really, really it's a no-brainer to have water safety education. We have fire safety, tornado safety, school shooter safety, and we know that drowning kills more than fires, tornadoes, and school shooters. So we really should have water safety education in school as well.
Well, again, I've said this earlier about another issue, but yeah, if it could save a life, which it could save many, then we will look forward to seeing more done where that is concerned. Everybody stay off the ice, please. Thank you so much, Dave Benjamin, for your time and your efforts moving forward.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
All right, you take care. Take those pictures from afar. Use that new iPhone, the zooming function. You can stay somewhere safe, zoom in, and get the pretty picture of the ice. All right, it's 2:48 right now. We're going to take a 2-minute break, and then I saw our meteorologist, Caitlin Cody, just walked in. We're going to bring her in so we can talk a little bit more about the warm-up that he was just mentioning there. was the attack and the capture in Venezuela of the president there, or maybe now we should say former president, now that his vice president has been officially sworn in. Nicolás Maduro, though, was in court today in New York City, he and his wife, and we have a reporter there, Kaylee Schuyler, to bring us up to date on what took place. Kaylee, can you hear me okay?
Hey, Anita. Yeah, I can hear you. So it was quite a chaotic scene out here while the arraignment was happening on the inside. Now, both Maduro and his wife Celia both pleaded not guilty, and neither of them asked for bail today, too. But what was interesting is when Maduro, after he pleaded not guilty, he stood up and basically insisted that he was innocent and said that he was still the president of Venezuela. But the judge had to cut him off several times and said that he could plead his case at a later date. Now, we saw kind of the opposite from his wife Celia. She kind of sat and was very quiet most of the time. But when we're talking about body language, Maduro, after the judge cut him off several times, was kind of slumped over in his chair, and Celia just kind of sat and listened. But here on the outside, there were several protesters and supporters, and it was kind of a mixed bag of the protesters and supporters. Some people were praising Donald Trump, or President Trump, I should say. One woman walked past me and she was sobbing and said, "Thank you, Donald Trump." But there were other people who were holding signs that said, "Hands off Venezuela and free President Maduro now."
Wow. And when we talk about the size of the crowd, I mean, do you think there were several dozens, hundreds, thousands of people who came out?
I would guess at least 200 people were out here. And when I walked up, it was kind of in the thick of it all. There actually were several protesters who were yelling at NYPD officers, and there were a lot of arguments going on. But it was definitely a full crowd. To put it kind of in perspective for you, since you can't see it now, right across from the courthouse, there's kind of this park. And protesters were crowding the whole sidewalk and were into the park, basically just crowded in chaos. And you could barely walk through the sidewalk.
And did it seem like there were more people on one side of this, belief of whether Maduro, that the issue is Maduro, or whether Venezuela wants to have its independence?
It was kind of hard to tell because it was just such a sea of people, and I was doing a bunch of live shots, reading notes. But it was, I would say, it was half and half of people who were supportive of the U.S. and people who were supportive of, Venezuela and Maduro being set free. So it was interesting. It was very tense. It was very chaotic for a little bit, and it kind of stayed chaotic for a few hours. I mean, I would say it just kind of became calm out here within the last hour, and it's been 4 hours since the arraignment started.
Yeah, and I just saw a big van that went right behind you as you were speaking there. So let me ask you this. Did it seem like any people ended up being put in handcuffs as a result of the protests that were taking place out there? And then just generally maybe sum this up. What happens next in this case?
If someone was put in handcuffs, I did not see it. I'll have to double check on that one for sure. But what's next? So today, both of them pleaded not guilty. Neither of them asked for bail. And the next court date is set for March 17th. So that's in about 60 days. So I'm sure a lot of work will be done between that. And we'll find out a lot more about kind of which way this case will be headed.
All right. Kaylee Schuyler there in New York City. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, you take care. It's 2:54 right now. We're going to take a quick break, everyone, and then we're going to bring in our own Caitlin Cody to talk a little bit more about our forecast. All right, 2:57. The aforementioned meteorologist Caitlin Cody is here now. It's been a beautiful day today,
hasn't it?
Yes.
It really has. So we had the sunshine, and then the clouds have been building. And temperature-wise, we feel good. Low 40s.
Amazing.
But we have a few changes happening. Now, I will start off with this, saying that it's going to be a mild week the entire week. 40s, if not 50s. And then this weekend it gets cold again. So enjoy the mild temperatures while we have them. We also have a few rounds of wet weather. So today it has been dry. Tonight, really tomorrow morning, we have the chance for some rain. Around 4 a.m., we could see some rain moving in. And then again tomorrow evening, the potential for rain, especially north of the city. But temperature-wise, still feeling good, as mentioned. 43 degrees expected tomorrow. Wednesday, 45. Wednesday is going to be the most beautiful day of the week with the sunshine and highs around 45. Then we climb to the low 50s Thursday. Now, the chance for wet weather is back. I mentioned we're going to have rounds of rain expected. So Thursday, scattered showers. Friday, we have the chance for rain too.
It looks like pebbles on Saturday coming down.
Yes, so that's the problem. The transition from rain to a rain-snow mix on Saturday. So what you're seeing there is that mixed precipitation. And we could even see some snow Saturday night. With lows in the 20s. So we are going to have temperatures smacked down to the 30s just in time for our weekend. And then it looks like we start off next week with quiet conditions, sunshine, 45. But in the meantime, today we've been in the mid 40s. It's really been a nice break from the cold. It's finally going to start melting some of those stubborn areas of snow. But I just heard your interview about going out on the ice. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
A lot of stories across the Midwest, people breaking through ice.
Yeah, for clicks on social media. Not okay to put your whole life at risk, or the first responders' lives who come in to try to save you.
Yeah, and keep your pets leashed
That
too,
too.
because that's a hazard. I
Yeah.
know by my parents' house in Michigan over the weekend, they said there's a dog that fell on the ice. They can't find the dog. It's just heartbreaking. So it is that time of year, that transition for now. Of course, this weekend we're getting down into the 30s again, but the great thaw is happening in Chicagoland.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about all the people who are going to be filling Soldier Field for another Bears-Packers matchup that's going to be happening on Saturday. You could see it on Fox Chicago, by the way. And how they're going to have to bundle up yet again
And it
for
might be a
this
little
matchup.
wet too, unfortunately. I know.
They're going to be slipping and sliding on that field.
And it's probably just going to get worse with these temperatures. So brace yourself. I know. In my mind, I've been thinking, spring's about to start. Like, we're headed into spring. We're going to have summer now. We are done with winter. No, we're just getting started.
Oh, boy. All right. Caitlin, thank you. We're going to see you this evening for...
Weird, right?
Yeah. Usually good day Chicago. But we're going to see her this evening.
Just got my coffee. What did we get?
You're
we got
ready to go.
Cinnamon dolce.
I'm
Gonna try it? Yeah. So
She'll be caffeinated and ready for you. All right. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
All right, everybody. We're going to take a quick break, 2 minutes, and we'll be right back. It's about 3:06 right now, everyone. Thank you so much for being here in our 3 o'clock hour of Chicago Live on a story as big as what took place over the weekend in Venezuela, the attack that resulted in the capture of the country's president at the time, Nicolás Maduro, and his wife, Celia. We have team coverage and will for a while now with all of the different outstanding conversations surrounding what happens from here. So just a short while ago, we heard from one of our reporters who was outside the courthouse in New York, where they just pled not guilty to the charges there. But now we're going down to Doral, Florida, where we see Chelsea Torres, another reporter who is covering local reaction. And this is a community that has a heavy Venezuelan population.
Yeah, that's right, Anita. You know, actually in this area, I mean, there's such a big Venezuelan community here that people from all over, I met a couple who drove all the way from Savannah, Georgia, just to be here because he knew that he wanted to be near people in his own Venezuelan community. He's from Venezuela. He has not been back to visit family in years, as many other people that I've talked to. They say that once they left, they did not go back because they just had this fear for what was going on while Maduro was the leader there. And now, I mean, the past few days, it's just been extreme celebration. People have been cheering, hugging. There's been tears of joy. Yesterday, there was a rally right here. I mean, I'm kind of at the epicenter here in Doral at El Arapizado for just one of these restaurants, a popular Venezuelan restaurant that a lot of people come to. And this really has been, Anita, the epicenter for a lot of those gatherings and celebrations.
It does seem like people on either side of the overall the attack that took place over the weekend feel as though, hey, Maduro was not a good guy. Either way you see it. But are you hearing from people who maybe aren't happy with how the U.S. handled getting him out of there?
Out of every single person I've talked to, and not only was I here, but I also went to a mass that was about 10 minutes away, where a lot of Venezuelan people were there as well. And there was one couple, one woman in particular, and she's actually Ecuadorian, and she said, I feel the sentiment for the Venezuelan people, but what she did not agree with is the fact that Trump had made the comment, President Trump had made the comment about taking over Venezuela for the meantime. Of course, we know kind of what's going to happen now, but this is before a lot of the those wrinkles had really been ironed out. So she said she understands why Venezuelan people are so excited right now, why they're so happy, and why they feel this sense of hope. But she just did not understand, and she did not appreciate how the administration was going to handle it from here on out. However, she did say, at least to me in particular, and mind you, Anita, she's the only person that really kind of was as honest about her opinions here. But she did say, you know, overall, this really is a good thing for the Venezuelan community.
And then there's the issue of, okay, well, the vice president under Maduro was sworn into office today as the president, but there was a duly elected leader in that area over the summer that Maduro kind of acted like, hey, nothing happened and stayed in power. But now there's this opposition that's like, hey, wait a minute, we were actually elected into power.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting because I think so many people here, they're just happy with the fact that Maduro was captured and he's already brought now to the United States. But I think at this point, for a lot of people that I've been talking to, they say they're just really unsure. They're unsure what's going to happen. What does this mean for the Venezuelan people? Not only that, but a lot of people that are here, they're thinking, okay, so does this mean that we can go and visit our family members now? Can we go, and is everything going to be safe? So that's one thing. So many uncertainties, including what you just mentioned. And so as of right now, I think a lot of people are still trying to figure out exactly what is going to happen, especially from the U.S. point of view.
Chelsea Torres, there in Doral, Florida, there is a lot that still has to be waded through. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this.
Thank you, Anita.
All right. Take care. 3:10 right now, and we're continuing on here. There's so much to come from that story, so stay with us. Obviously, we're going to continue checking in with reporters wherever we can get them who are connected to the story of the attack there in Venezuela and what comes next, the different conversations that come from it in terms of how the Venezuelan people feel and how things are handled in the days, weeks, and really years to come now, and also the threats that have been made to other nations following the attack that took place there. So we're covering all of that. But we're going to move forward after a quick break. We're going to talk with the Cook County Medical Examiner about a very important topic here, a significant drop in homicides and also opioid overdose deaths. That's coming up after this break. 2 minutes and we're back. Welcome back here to Chicago Live, everyone. It's about 3:15 right now, and as we mentioned when we were speaking with our political reporter, Paris Schultz, this is a time at the start of a new year when you start to get some data that really gives us an overview of the year that just passed, but also gives us a sense of, all right, well, what are the things that we're going to focus on moving forward into 2026? And so here now our conversation with the Cook County Medical Examiner as we are getting new information, preliminary statistics for cases that they handled in 2025 to talk about here. Dr. Pani Arnkamar, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm encouraged, but also troubled by some of the things in your report. Give me your overall assessment of what you've seen in the 2025 data.
So overall, we have encouraging numbers. We see a decline in the opioid deaths, and we see a decline in our homicide deaths. We see a more than 30% decline in our homicide deaths. We confirmed 541 homicide deaths for 2025. That number can vary a little, but compared to our numbers in 2024, which was 792, that is a significant decline. And the last time we had numbers less than 600 for our homicide deaths was in 2014, so more than 10 years ago.
Wow. I mean, a significant change, but then again, like I said, it's mixed emotions because I just think of 541 people who were killed, and that's just still horrible to hear of all of those lives lost. Let's kind of break these up. Let's talk about the opioid data, the overdose deaths. I'm seeing here that the vast majority of these involve fentanyl.
Yes, fentanyl still continues to be the most the drug that causes most of our opioid deaths. So 82% of our opioid deaths in 2025 so far has been due to fentanyl. So it still remains the deadly drug causing our opioid deaths. It has declined slightly compared to prior years, but not much.
Yeah, and when you think of that, can we break down maybe some of the demographic data? Who is most susceptible, and where are you finding more of these people coming from?
Most of the opioid deaths are in the African American population. They make up 50% of the opioid deaths. The Latinos make up 17% of our opioid deaths, and 32% are in the white population. Most of the deaths are in the city of Chicago, in the West Side, so Austin, Lawndale neighborhoods. That's where we're seeing most of the opioid deaths.
And I think maybe the most heartbreaking thing that I read in this release was that the year's youngest opioid overdose death in Cook County was a 2-year-old girl from Chicago. That's heartbreaking.
Yes, it is. It was a 2-year-old who died from opioids. The oldest was an 85-year-old. But the population that is most affected, and this has consistently been happening, is our 50 to 59-year-olds. It is affecting all ages, but the age that is significantly impacted is our 50 to 59-year-olds.
Do you see that nationally as well?
We are a little different. Usually it affects the younger population. But in Cook County, over the last 10 years or so, it is the 50 to 59, so slightly older population that is being affected by the opioids.
That is very intriguing there. And I know you can't get into the hows, the whys, all of those types of things. But that's maybe another question for police when we talk with them. Let's break down the homicides. Again, what are we seeing? Where are we seeing it?
Most of our homicides are in the city of Chicago. We do see a decline both in the city and in our suburban communities. So about 426 cases were in the city of Chicago out of the 541 homicide deaths. Our suburbs that have the highest homicides, usually there were about 10 to 15 in prior years. Now we are seeing 5 to 7. The communities most affected are those in Dalton, Cicero, and Harvey. The population most affected is our African American population. They make up 73% of our homicide deaths, with Latinos making up 18% of our homicide deaths. So more significant in the African American population when it comes to homicides.
And it looks like primarily African American males at that. And can you talk about the age here? Because yet again, I'm incredibly troubled by what I'm seeing.
The ages that are affected by homicides are the younger age population, but we do see a number of deaths in our less than 18-year-olds. So 57 of our homicide deaths were in our less than 18-year-old age group, and 10 of them under the, 15 of them under the age of 10.
I mean, it's... It should take all of our breath away to hear that. It's horrible. It's horrible. 15 deaths, homicides of children under the age of 10. You see these numbers, and again, you're able to put a more positive spin on it. I mean, for those of us who don't do what you do, just hearing that, it's a lot. But you're able to see it from a larger perspective, a statistical perspective of years of having done what you do. And so you're slightly encouraged that at least we're seeing some movement, that some of these numbers aren't as bad as they used to be. And I mean, we're talking like pre-COVID levels.
So there has been a decline even since pre-COVID levels, but the deaths we are seeing are all preventable. Our opioid deaths are preventable. Our homicides are preventable. Opioid deaths still continue to be the most common non-natural death that we are seeing in Cook County. So it's a significant problem, but the numbers are encouraging. So the steps that are being taken is moving this needle in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. And just on a final note, I'm also seeing kind of a delineation here between gun-related homicides and then also suicide data, and unfortunately a slight uptick in suicide deaths.
Yes, it's a slight uptick in our number of suicides. They go up and a little down sometimes in some years. It's not statistically significant if you see the numbers over the years. So I would not, worry about that. It's a small increase. So we had 480 suicides in 2025, and in 2024 we had 451. So a slight uptick.
Still, it's hard to hear those numbers again. I know you have a better perspective of all of these things. How do you do what you do? I mean, this is hard just for me to read and have this conversation without just feeling like, oh gosh. How do you do what you do?
We remember that we are the last physicians for our patients, and we're the ones who kind of speak for our patients. We explain what happened to the patient, to our families, and see trends in deaths, right? Like with our opioid deaths, with our homicides. We were the ones who worked with the hospitals nearby to figure out it was fentanyl that was causing the opioid deaths in 2015. So, as the last physicians for our patients, that's when we can give answers that gives us satisfaction, and to be able to notice trends and let the public know of worrisome trends, I think is rewarding.
Well, thank you for being a voice for those who may otherwise we wouldn't have answers for. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. It's about 3:25, everyone. Let's take a little woosah time. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone. 3:28 right now. Really interesting conversation to come here right now. So, Chicago police just recently seized a vehicle key fob programmer. Philadelphia police warning drivers that they've seen thieves use the devices to steal cars in under 2 minutes. And likewise, in Nevada, they say that some of the stolen cars are being brought to Las Vegas, places like that, to try to sell them on social media using fake VIN plates. Yes, we have seen these TikTok and other social media videos where people have posted ways to do this stuff, but it's going to all new levels and very fast. So Lieutenant Adam Brocious with the Illinois Secretary of State Police is joining me now. He's the director of the Illinois Statewide Auto Theft Task Force and the director of the Greater Peoria Auto Crimes Task Force. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your expertise. Tell me a little bit about the rise in this particular type of crime.
So the vehicle key fob reprogramming or cloning has been emerging in the United States and specifically around the Chicagoland area for about 10 years now. It's gotten more prolific in the last 3 to 4, and the hardware and the equipment, the technology to do that is become more readily available. When it first started emerging, it wasn't as readily available online to purchase, and we were seeing the devices being stolen from locksmiths, from their vehicles, from their businesses, and so forth. But now a simple search on the internet will give you the sites to be able to purchase the equipment and be able to do that. And it's gotten to where it's very, very common.
I mean, when we talk about years of increase, it seems like something would have happened by now, either from a legislative side or some kind of way, to put a stop to this or at least slow it down.
Sure, and you're seeing progress on the manufacturer side. The manufacturers, it's kind of a cat and mouse game, if you will. The manufacturers will update and bolster their encryption, their safeguards, their fallbacks in regards to this, and almost as quickly the offenders are picking up on that and circumventing it. And it's the information that has to be out to the new car dealers, to the vehicle locksmiths and so forth, to be able to service their customers when they legitimately lose a vehicle key or fob, to be able to get them back into their vehicles and running.
So let's kind of walk through how they're doing this. I mean, you said, a simple Google or, some type of search, internet search could show somebody how to get one of these programmers. How are they able to do this?
Sure. There are 2 different methodologies on how these offenders are going at doing it. And the first is that they are getting one of these key fob programmers, and they'll break into a vehicle. They'll smash out a window or use a Slim Jim to unlock it, or whatever method they choose to do that. So more of a, you don't want to do that in broad daylight. But once they're into the vehicle, as you noted in your opening on this segment, was that it only takes a minute or 2 from the point where they take this reprogrammer, plug it into the vehicle, and program a new fob to that vehicle before they're able to operate that as if they had one of the original fobs. One of the other methodologies is that we're seeing, it's not as popular in the Chicagoland area in the Midwest yet, is that they're using devices that will capture the signal that is coming from the legitimate fobs that you may have in your pocket, your purse, hanging by the door to your home. This electronic device will capture that signal that's being emitted from those fobs, and will then store that and replicate that to be able to open your car, start your car, drive your car away. And then once they are in a place of more comfort, if you will, they will then reprogram a blank fob, as we discussed earlier.
So what do you learn? I mean, one of the other things that I mentioned before coming to you was the fact that, Chicago police just got a programmer. So what do you learn when you confiscate one of these things? What are the types of things you can glean from getting one of these? Certainly.
Well, one of the things you can get from these is they're very similar to most electronics in that they hold a memory. So there's a history to it. So you're able to see which vehicles that particular device has been used to reprogram, which is going to lead you to most likely more stolen vehicles. As you mentioned in the opening of the segment, is that some jurisdictions, areas that are seeing these cars stolen, but also coming back in or staying in with their VIN numbers replaced in fraudulent documents to lend legitimacy to that. So once they have the reprogrammed fob, they're able to pass that vehicle off as legitimate with that with that fob and fraudulent paperwork.
How do you keep from buying one? I mean, and what do you do if it, I mean, how does it come out that you bought one of these?
Certainly. Well, one good way to protect yourself is one is, if you buy from a dealership, you have some recourse because you're buying from an entity that's licensed in the state of Illinois to sell vehicles. You're likely going to be able to find them if there's a problem, opposed to if you're buying off of social media and so forth. But if you do purchase or are in the market and you're looking on a marketplace or something to that effect, is protect yourself and buy a vehicle history report. If you're purchasing a vehicle and this vehicle says it has existed in a state out in the West Coast its entire life, and there's no indication that it has ever spent any time in Illinois, and now all of a sudden it's in Illinois, and it may have a title with it that is from, say, North Carolina, something's probably going to be wrong with that. If it's too good of a deal to be true, it usually is, like with most things. So the investment into one of those vehicle history reports, it does protect you. It does. That's a tool that we use when we're investigating these to look at is this vehicle existing in two different states? Where's the title that we're looking at? What's the title in hand of the person that we're speaking to? Does that match the last issued title to that vehicle? And those are all things that those types of reports will be able to give the consumer public as well.
I feel like the first time we really started to hear about these were like the Kia boys, I believe, that were on one social media site showing people how to do it. But as I'm reading through it, like the types of vehicles that are being stolen via these key fobs or the programmers is really varied now.
It is. When we first started seeing the key fob cloning and reprogramming, it tended to be more the luxury vehicles or high performance type vehicles because there's investment even by the offenders to get to the point where they can turn around and sell this to an unsuspecting purchaser. So if they're going to do that, they're gonna make it worth their while and find something that is going to be more of a higher end turnover for them. But in the ensuing years, the equipment has gotten relatively more affordable. And the knowledge base on how to do this is expanded thanks to the internet, as you mentioned, as more people are out there that understand how to do this. So you're seeing that kind of spread across to your more traditional middle class level vehicles, where initially it was more the performance and luxury.
Wow. I want to ask you a couple more things here. I'd like to know, is there a way to prevent this from happening to you? If you do have a newer model car, I mean, are you just at their mercy, or is there a way to keep this from happening?
There's a couple of things that you can do to protect yourself. The very first thing that we in law enforcement notice with a lot of these is take your cars, and including your key fobs, out of your cars. Don't leave them in your cars. Because then the offenders, they don't even have to work. They just get in, push the button, and go. But beyond that, to protect yourself from the technology that captures the signal coming from your fobs, is first, if you have the capacity to park the vehicle in a garage, park it in a garage. I understand that a lot of people don't. However, don't hang your keys right next to the door. Think of the signal that's emanating from these fobs, they're not Bluetooth type signals, but that's what most people will understand the range of what a Bluetooth device will do. It's similar to that. So if you keep that key outside of, say, a Bluetooth range of the exterior of your home, where somebody coming up to your front door or walking by could come by and capture that signal, that would help prevent that. Now, there's things that you can buy. There's sheaths that you can put your fobs in that work similar to like Faraday type bags that will block or shield that signal from coming out. Some work better than others. You're going to get what you pay for with that. It's kind of a hassle. There are some more technological based solutions that are out there. One being is a cutoff switch to the electronics in your vehicle. We have on one of our bait vehicles, we have it installed that it's a fob. We turn off, we can click a button and it shuts off all power to that vehicle.
Wow.
So either one of these methodologies will not work to that vehicle because there's not going to be any power to that vehicle unless we turn that back on via that fob. And then there's some other that get more sophisticated from there that are able to be purchased through, anywhere we buy a vehicle alarm and so forth.
Do you see car dealers or manufacturers doing things differently as a result of this?
Well, car dealerships are very much affected by this because they have a large inventory of vehicles that are susceptible to this, that are sitting for the most part unattended overnight or through weekends and so forth. So they've bolstered their physical security to their dealerships themselves. Now, the vehicles they sell, some of the dealerships will offer at the time of your purchase technology such as low jack. They'll offer cutoff switches, things of that nature. And the manufacturers, of course, different manufacturers do different things, but they're very much aware of this being a problem, and they're walking that line between being able to service their customers when they legitimately lose or damage a fob, on being able to get that replaced to them and keeping their customers' investments safe. So they're making advancements, but it's like a lot of things. As soon as something gets upgraded, it's not long behind that is when the offenders pick up and adjust to that.
Exactly, and that really leads to my next question, which is, what are you all seeing as like the next frontier, the other trends that thieves are already starting to pick up on?
Well, I would say the next thing that we'll see more emergent in the Chicagoland market is going to be the devices that capture the RF signals that are coming from the fobs and taking that to then go and drive away with your car. We have seen a few of those devices that we've recovered, but it's been real hit and miss on whether they work. There's been a lot of studies that the National Insurance Crime Bureau has done one recently that where they've tested a couple of these products and they've kind of worked intermittently. So as that technology gets better, you may see that more and more. But as of right now, they're pretty successful in being able to knock a window out and being able to plug in and clone a fob and be on their way within a minute or two.
Wow. Oh my. I was actually having a conversation with a young lady. This was a few years ago, and she said she walked in her residence, and within 10 minutes, the police were calling her. Yeah, somebody had just broken in and gotten in her vehicle and was on their way, and I guess somebody else saw it and contacted police. But I mean, it happened so fast.
It is, yes.
Well, we certainly appreciate you being on this. Just so we're aware, I mean, when we do report it, what are the ramifications for people doing this stuff?
Well, you have your possession of stolen motor vehicle, and there's certain aggravating factors that come to that: the value of the vehicle, the victim, if there's any aggravating circumstances to that. But also, just having one of these reprogrammers or the software to be able to do that, and the equipment is considered a burglary tool. So that's another felony charge right there. Then in and of itself. To possess one of those and not have reason to have one. You're not a vehicle locksmith. You're in a stolen vehicle. That's going to be reasonable that you be charged with the possession of the burglary tools and so forth. And depending on how far it progresses, if there's fraudulent documents that are with that car at that point, that leads into other charges, forgery, things of that nature as well.
Lieutenant Adam Brocious, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for making time for us to enlighten us to what's going on.
Anytime.
All right, you take care. It's about 3:45, everyone. Oh, that is mind-boggling just to think of how quickly they're able to do that and how easily they're able to get that equipment. Certainly hope that they're able to, by this time next year, we're seeing some trends go in the opposite direction somehow. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back. $3:47 right now, everyone. This is our final conversation for the day, and I promise you, I really thought that after taking some time off, I would be coming back to work on Victory Monday. But it's actually not that. We've got a lot of questions about what happened last night in the Bears-Lions game and how we get ready for a third matchup this season against the Packers coming up this Saturday, and you can watch that on Fox Chicago. Shameless plug. But let's get to Mark Carman, the host of CHGO Sports Podcast. Thank you so much. We always love speaking with you.
What's up, Anita? It would be great to be talking about a win, but we are talking about the Bears in the playoffs with a home game and the Packers. So there's a lot of things to be looking forward to Saturday night. Fingers crossed, of course, they get it done.
Yeah, having a game at home in the playoffs is a win in and of itself, and just getting this far in the season. I mean, we have not talked about meaningful football in January in quite some time. So how do we, in this quick week, this quick turnover, get ready for the Packers this weekend?
Well, I think it really started after the game yesterday. Ben Johnson was pretty blunt talking about how he was not happy with the offense and how the game plan last week was pretty basic, yet they still didn't execute, didn't play to the level that he thought that obviously that they needed to win, scoring only 16 points. And, he was asked specifically, what about the offense did you not like? The amount of points that we scored. So, this is a guy, dealing direct, and you got to respect that. And then he had his press conference this afternoon, and, he was asked about that, and he said, like, look, job of the head coach not to be a cheerleader. It's about to, basically speak truths. So, I think the message has been loud and clear. And from there, the offense is a concern, but so is the defense. So, they do have a lot of work. They got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't feel like we could stop much of anything. And then there's the whole issue of time of possession that keeps coming up.
Yeah, so that's a combination on both the offense and defense, right? Because if the defense gets off the field, it is the offense's job to go on an extended drive. So the defense gets their rest, and ultimately, hopefully, the Bears put points on the board and you win the football game. That didn't happen last night. The Lions had long sustained drives. And it ended up in them having the football 11 minutes more than the Bears. Never a good formula for winning football games. But so they got to get the ground game back going. It wasn't really there last night. Kyle Monangai had 14 yards, and DeAndre Swift had 40. Those guys combined need to be over 100. 54 is not enough. So it's been there all season long, though. Green Bay's not great against the run, so there's reason for optimism they can find themselves this week.
Yeah, and it seemed like they kind of got to dig in, saying Ben Johnson kind of got to dig in on LaFleur, saying, "Oh, we don't sit our starters," but we also didn't really play. It felt we didn't play full throttle for 3 of the 4 quarters.
Well, it's a bad outcome when you lose the football game and one of your key guys in the secondary, who's been a big blessing, midseason pickup, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, ends up concussed and highly unlikely. I would think that he would play this week. Cole Kmet took a major shot in the end zone on the 2-point conversion. Shout out Kmet to hold on, catch the ball. I mean, that's a beast type of play by Cole.
He looked like he saw some stars.
For sure, right? I mean, so you lose the game, I think you're losing at least one of your players, and I'm not sure what the status is with Cole. That ain't great. And then, as it turns out, you can't do it like that. But the Commanders beat the Eagles, so you really didn't have to play anybody. And the Packers have been resting, which Green Bay should be resting. They're locked in the 7th seed. There was no place for them to go. So resting your players. This is football. It is a car crash every weekend. I don't think you can look at the Packers with wondering what they're doing. It makes complete sense. The Bears also, though, were playing for seeding, and so you're getting an extra home game if you win the game. So I get why they played their players. It just didn't work out great, when you look at the final product.
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking at who the possibilities of us facing next, I think it was like San Francisco, the Rams, or the Packers. Would you have chosen the Packers?
I would have. Look. I think the Bears feel like they should have beaten Green Bay twice. The Packers probably feel like they should have beaten the Bears twice. The Packers lost their best defensive player after the first game in Micah Parsons. That's a major deal. So Jordan Love is back healthy after leaving the last game concussed by Austin Booker. So it's not going to be easy, but this is the playoffs. Like, who do you want to play? You want to play the 49ers? You just lost to them and they put up 42 on you. You want to go play the Rams? Most experts thought they were the best team in the NFC for their entire season. So there is no easy little corner here. You weren't going to play Carolina, who everyone thinks is the worst team in the NFC playoffs, but that wasn't a possibility because they won their division. So that was never going to be a matchup.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously we're getting ready for the Packers, and I'm going to ask you predictions in a moment. But today was a big day around the league. Any surprises to you on Black Monday?
I wouldn't say any surprises, no. Pete Carroll didn't win a lot of games. One and dones are always a little bit stunning, especially for a guy that's had a long tenure of success in the league. Betting on Pete, if you're going to bet on him, just to hire an older coach, then I would think you'd let him stick through one more year. The Raiders didn't do that, but that's how they do business out there. Kevin Stefanski, who was fired by the Browns, I like Kevin Stefanski a lot. That I would think he'd get another opportunity. Maybe Arizona would look at a guy like that, to turn their program around. But I also like I was a Jonathan Gannon fan, and he got fired too. So look, dog eat dog world out there, Anita. If you don't win, patience is very, very thin in the NFL world, and Stefanski was there for multiple years, same thing with Gannon. So I can't say I was surprised by any of it, but it's also like, some pretty good coaches out there.
Yeah, and so that leads to the next question, which is, do you think there are some, like we saw last year? I mean, we were the recipients of one of those hot coaches that people wanted to swoop in and get. Obviously, this year, it seems like our team is kind of safe. But do you see some opening somewhere where you think, oh, they're going to gobble this person up to bring them for this?
Well, one of the guys on the Bears defensive staff, Al Harris, who is in charge of the secondary, and he's the takeaway machine. When he was with the Cowboys, they had a ton of interceptions. He left there; those numbers dropped. He came here. The Bears have led the league in takeaways. I would be worried if I were the Bears that Al Harris could get poached as a defensive coordinator candidate. And I think Dennis Allen is safe because he's been an established defensive coordinator in the league for many years, along with the head coach. And Ben Johnson has given nothing but praise to Dennis. But the Bears' defensive numbers are horrible. So I do slightly wonder, and the takeaways are great. So I do slightly wonder if an option came to Al, would the Bears consider elevating him here? I doubt it. He'd probably walk out the door. But I think that is one name to watch. Very interesting take on that. Okay, so what's your take on Saturday's game? I'm going to be picking the Bears, and I do that. What is it? Do the kids say 6-7, 6-7? Like coin flip, old school. This is I think the Bears offense will find their way. I think the defense will somehow play better. So the Bears are at home. Green Bay's lost 4 in a row. It feels like a game that like the odds makers are making it a coin flip, anywhere from 1.5 to on either side, and most odds have it as a pick 'em. So listen, I'm in Chicago. I'm going to pick the Bears to win. But I don't do it with any huge confidence. Like if you're asking 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, what's your confidence level? It's a 5. It's maybe a 5.1. It's right in the middle here. But I am hopeful that the Bears will get their first playoff win since 2011, which is 5,400 and some odd days. I don't have the exact number in front of me that I just tweeted out. But who's counting? Yeah, right. It's been a minute, Anita. Now, some people have said, if they lose, some will look at the season like a what for type. But we have come a long way this season. I think there are a lot of positives to take from the season, even if there's a whole lot of work to be done before the next season rolls around. Yeah, for lack of a better way of putting it, it will suck if the Bears lose Saturday night. So shy. Yeah, I mean that's not going to feel good for the Bears, for Bears fans. Sure, but the Bears won 5 games last year. The Bears haven't been to the playoffs since 2018. The Bears took a major step forward if it does, no matter what happens in the playoffs. And look, the goal coming into this season was for the Bears to establish a culture and kind of plant their flag of the team that they're going to be going forward with Ben Johnson. And they've done that. There's going to be some, I would think, significant changes in the offseason. We'll really see what Ben thinks about the players on the team. I guarantee the roster is, I would think, borderline dramatically different next year. Because, he's had a whole year to figure out what he likes and what he doesn't like. And there's no way he liked everything he saw. But it's the season, no matter what happens, in my mind, has been a success. And, look, Ben, he's not taking any, he's not cashing in his chips right now. This is a 4-game season right now. He said yesterday in the postgame they've won 4 in a row twice this year. That's what they have to do to win the Super Bowl. That's the goal. It's not to just beat the Packers. It's not even just to get to the NFC Championship game. They're not taking it one game at a time. I mean, they are. But the goal is to win the Super Bowl. He's put it out there, and I love it. We will leave it there, my friend. Thank you so much. And the News at 4 is next. All right.
Live from Chicago, this is Fox 32 News at 4.
Now at 4, the city is alive with anticipation. The Bears are locked in for their first round playoff showdown with the Packers.
A big change for commuters.